human.
Welcome back, Paul Charchian with you. Going to pivot from football. I hope you had a chance to hear the Darnold diatribe. I think it was well thought out, very well rationalized by me. But your thoughts are welcome on Sam Darnold, the Darnold diatribe, and the acceptance that must come with the absolute fact that the Vikings made a mistake by not signing Sam Darnold. I don't think you can justify anything else at this point, but if you'd like, you can do that. The Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is 64686. The Talkback iHeartRadio app. As you know, hit the microphone button. You got 30 seconds to give your opinion on the Sam Darnold situation as he guides his team to a Super Bowl and successfully goes head to head with Hall of Fame bound Matthew Stafford in one of the great playoff games in recent memory. Joining me now, a longtime friend, Fred Minnick. Fred is the premier whiskey expert in America. He's got several books. He's got 2 podcasts going now. The Fred Minnick Show, which is very whiskey heavy. Fourth and Neat with Jared Allen, which is also whiskey heavy, but also a lot of other stuff. And Fred has got a new book coming called Bottom Shelf. Hi, Fred. Great to talk to you again.
Paul, it's always a pleasure. I know this is a tough day for Vikings fans.
It is. Fred, I mentioned this last segment, and I don't expect that you were listening from Louisville, but there really is a scenario here if the Vikings had decided to keep Sam Darnold the way that Brian Flores had this defense going, that it's the Vikings going to the Super Bowl. That's, Seattle, I don't know, Seattle's goes to war, with, I don't know, somebody, and, they're not a factor because they don't have the quarterbacking. And yeah, who knows? The Vikings could have been maybe they're a Super Bowl team this year. Ugh.
Honestly, so on my podcast with Jared Allen, Fourth and Neat, we talk about the Vikings pretty much every episode. And he loves that defense, and he's always talking about the defense. He's like, I was just texting Flores, what are we going to do to keep you? That man is still such a Vikings fan, and it's in his heart.
It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be fun to have a conversation with him about how he feels about Darnold doing so well.
Yeah. Jared's fantastic. The Fourth and Neat is a ton of fun. I have heard most, maybe even all of the episodes. TJ Hawkinson has been on recently. I love that you guys work in football, you work in bourbon, and it's a ton of fun. I love it.
Appreciate that. We specialize in conspiracy theories, especially time travel and aliens these days. So Jared likes to go off on these tangents. It's kind of fun.
Well, okay, look, I think scientifically we've figured out that time travel is possible, and I think we've done it at some subatomic level where we've shifted some.
So we interviewed one of the Montauk Project survivors, and he was giving us all the details, and we were thinking this guy is loopy and everything. Within 2 weeks, things that he predicted happened, and it was Jared and I just started I don't know. We started seeing this guy randomly in the streets, and we're kind of getting freaked out a little bit. But yeah, we have a lot of fun there at Fourth and Neat. Jared's an amazing dude. He's snowed in right now, in Nashville. We're all snowed in out here in the South.
Yeah.
We don't really know what to do. So, any tips from Minnesota on what to do on snowy days?
Well, you either stay inside or you just go have fun in all the snow in ways that you can't normally do. And that's the snow angel, a little overrated. I think you can do a little bit better than just dropping into the snow and doing the snow angel, Fred. Yeah. I've got higher aspirations for you. Do you have a 4x4, and can you rig up something so you can have it pull a sled? and, like long rope, tow rope, and then get to a sled and then just start pulling people with that?
No, I don't think I can do that with my Ultima.
No, I don't think your Ultima is going to make it.
No.
We'll just stay inside and talk. We'll talk bourbon. Fred's America's premier whiskey expert. And Fred, Fred and I, you and I have been friends long enough that I've seen you do things like move McKenna from $25 at the bottom of my shelf to $70 at eye level on my shelf.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah, that's one of the weird things about being a whiskey critic is that I'm always honest, I'm always candid, and I always give my legitimate feelings after I taste something. And I developed my ability to taste like after I got home from Iraq, and I was going through PTSD, and I went through this whole taste mindfulness training to help me get through. It was kind of a mindfulness exercise. It was to basically help ground me from things that would trigger me after war. And it basically gave me this entire ability to taste that I never knew I had. And I mean, I turned that into a career of tasting bourbon. And I mean, that's really what my new book, Bottom Shelf, is about. And I do talk about the McKenna thing where we picked McKenna as the best whiskey in the world, and it balloons overnight. I've done this repeatedly, and a lot of times my favorite whiskeys, like the Old Crow Chess Piece from 1969, I think is the greatest bourbon ever made. And I said so, and it went from being able to get it for like $40 at a state sale to like $700 like overnight. And basically blew me out of the ability to buy my favorite whiskey. So it's weird.
Have you ever been tempted, Fred, to invest in the whiskeys before you sing the praises of the whiskey so that you can be sitting on that profit delta? As
a good Catholic, I don't want to know what my priest would tell me for doing something like that. So that's kind of how I live. I'm like, do I have to go to confession for this if I do this? So like I'm pretty on the straight and narrow when it comes to this stuff. Like it seems like it is fun and everything, but I do take it very seriously. And I know that when I say something's good, that it can like change the market a little bit and help brands. Like I just picked a whiskey in my top 100 from Minnesota, a brand called Brother Justice, which absolutely beautiful American single malt, just completely wowed me. It was just such a really incredible flavor profile. Picked number 4 out of all the whiskeys I tasted last year.
Wow.
Number 4.
Wow. Brother Justice, I remember when they were starting Brother Justice about 10 years ago, maybe less than 10 years ago. And at the time, and I believe I've got this correct, they were just trying to get into the marketplace and they were speed aging their stuff. And at that point, I was nervous about their ultimate survivability, sustainability at Brother Justice, but it sounds like over time, they've created a really good product. What do you love about the Brother Justice bourbon?
Well, so it's a single malt. They make.
It's a single malt. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's not bourbon, but they are very much Minnesota focused. So like they have kind of like their own malting procedures, and they're using peat. They're getting actual peat out of Minnesota versus like Scotland. And they're using Minnesota trees for their barrels. So it's kind of like, we talk about terroir or regional or location of whiskey a lot. We don't really have a lot of examples of like where it can actually make a difference. But in tasting Brother Justice over and over again, I think there can be a case that there's something pretty special in Minnesota for making whiskey. But it's so cold there. I think you got to be from Minnesota and to understand the climate and how to work with it to make it benefit your whiskey. Because if you bring someone from Kentucky to come up and make whiskey in Minnesota, I think it would be an abject failure because they're not used to that climate. And my brother Justice, Phil is from there. I mean, that dude's probably one of the biggest Vikings fans there is, and
yeah,
he's done an incredible job.
Well, since we're talking about local whiskeys, let's hit on Keeper's Heart, because we haven't seen an investment like this in Minnesota really ever. They opened up a gigantic distillery. They brought in, and you mentioned, being from Minnesota, they brought in Irish master distiller Brian Nation to lead the effort with Keeper's Heart. What are your thoughts on the Keeper's Heart distillery and what they're doing here in the Twin Cities?
Well, I got to be honest. When Keeper's Heart came out, they were part of this like very small but impactful trend of blending different types of whiskeys. And so they were blending Irish whiskey with bourbon and rye, so two American styles. And it really, when it comes to whiskeys, you go onto a shelf that says bourbon, rye, Irish whiskey, or Scotch. Like if you combine those two, you got a lot of these liquor store reps. They're looking at this bottle and they're like, they start getting dizzy. They don't know where to put it, so they just started putting it in the bourbon section. And so they started getting bourbon fans in a time that bourbon was blowing up. And so Keeper's Heart kind of gets associated with bourbon, but really it was never bourbon. It was like a blend of two different styles of whiskey. And that had been done before, but no one had ever put the level of marketing that they were doing. And so they were buying like spots on like the Dan Patrick Show, and had all sorts of like sports related marketing. So it's like they really understood who whiskey drinkers were. They didn't come out of, they spent their money on marketing very wisely, in my opinion. And so I think they're a pretty exciting addition to the growth of whiskey overall.
All right, that's Keeper's Heart. We're talking to Fred Minnick, America's premier whiskey expert. Your new book, Bottom Shelf, talks about Old Crow. Old Crow is I think, a notorious bottom shelf whiskey, but like a lot of things, it wasn't always that way. Can you give us a little bit of the history of Old Crow, which goes way, way back?
Yeah, when we look at Old Crow, I mean, there is a case that can be made that bourbon could be called Crow whiskey. The guy who basically really made the American whiskey profile of bourbon special was a guy named James C. Crow. That's what Old Crow is named after. It's named after this man. And believe it or not, he died before his brand ever became famous, but everyone loved his whiskey so much. And he basically gave all these industrial tips to all these distilleries. And, you had politicians bribing voters with shots of Old Crow if they voted for him. So that's why you can no longer, there was a law that was passed that you can't drink on election day or buy alcohol on election day. It's because politicians were bribing voters with Old Crow. And you had all of these stories like this. And Old Crow was synonymous with absolute premium, the very, very best of all of bourbon. And then in 1987, Jim Beam acquired Old Crow and its sister brands, Overholt and Old Grandad. And they kept Old Grandad and Overholt in kind of a little bit higher esteem than Old Crow. Old Crow, they just took the whiskey from it and used it for the likes of Knob Creek and Baker's, and just relegated Crow to the bottom shelf. And it's because there was a bitter rivalry between Jim Beam and Old Crow. And, that's what a lot of the book is about, is trying to understand why did Jim Beam punish Old Crow like they did? Because now, the people who drink Old Crow, they're usually doing it because they have $12 and they want something. If you want $12 3-year-old Kentucky bourbon at a low proof, Old Crow's there for you. But I'm telling you, the whiskey that was is better than like what Pappy Van Winkle is today. That is how special Old Crow used to be.
What happened? So, and then why did Old Crow and James Crow, why did they sell to Beam if they had a heated rivalry? Why sell to your rival?
So it was owned by a company called National Distillers by the 1980s. And that company was basically just getting out of the spirits business. So they sold their entire portfolio to Jim Beam. And in my book, Bottom Shelf, I uncovered like this like dark secret that no one really knew about, no one ever really talked about why Jim Beam needed that whiskey so badly. Like there wasn't just a like, we're going to acquire this and use, and knock it out of competition. They legitimately needed the National Distillers, the Old Crow whiskey, to survive. So Jim Beam in the late 1980s was up against some really, really prominent regulations that were coming up, and they were at risk of losing a lot. Now, what did they do with that whiskey? Well, I mean, they basically used the Old Crow whiskey to launch what became small batch. They created the entire, Jim Beam became one of the most important marketers of bourbon because they pioneered and marketed the heck out of small batch whiskey. And that's what you see everywhere all the time. But what Jim Beam did with that whiskey was good. They just kicked and curb stomped the Old Crow brand. You know, they took the whiskey, but they're like, we don't care about Old Crow.
That's an amazing story. And that's why, I don't know what's in Old Crow now, but you're telling me it's not close to what was in Old Crow back in its heyday.
Yeah. I mean, this is in a lot of ways, Old Crow is the New York Jets of bourbon, Actually, no, I take that back because the Jets actually have never really been that good. They had one run, but yeah.
Yeah. That's a great story, and you can hear more about it in Bottom Shelf, Fred Minnick's upcoming book. Whiskey tastes seem to have changed a lot, and what I don't know, and you will know better than me, we look at the heritage whiskey brands like Jim Beam or Old Crow, Seagram 7. Remember 7 and 7? People, when I was a kid, everybody ordered 7 and 7s. I don't think most of the listeners know what either of the 7s is anymore, Fred. So has the whiskey changed or has our palates changed over time? If I opened a Seagram 7 today, would it be anything like what a Seagram 7 was in the 1970s when it was a go-to brand?
Well, it's interesting. Seagrams, that was a blend. It remains a blend. And so the palates of whiskey drinking, I would say, have moved away from that style of blend. If anything, they have moved toward, if they had that kind of appeal, they probably have moved to like Crown, because that would be more on the flavor profile that they like. But what captures so many whiskey drinkers is marketing. And Seagram 7 was one of those that was very good at marketing. And that company that owns Seagrams, basically in its namesake, Seagrams, sold all its properties in the early 2000s. And, the people who owned the company went into the movie business. So they completely got out of the spirits business, largely altogether. And whoever got, the people who got the Seagrams brand just didn't care enough about it to keep marketing it. But they did care enough about Crown Royal to push that. So a lot of these things that we see in the cycles of our life when it comes to spirits is like who's out there pushing it. And no one pushes Seagrams really at a high level anymore. And now it's all Kentucky bourbon, all these brands from from Kentucky to all the way to the state of Washington.
Who are what are the brands that are really excellent marketers right now in this moment? And if I went into a liquor store, I would see, I'd see the fruits of all of their labors from a marketing standpoint.
I don't think Maker's Mark has ever missed a beat. I think Maker's Mark is probably the best marketing company when it comes to bourbon. They put so much time and effort into their red wax marketing.
Yep.
Because everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. And you can't copy it, because if you were to start the old Charchian bourbon tomorrow and put red wax on it, they would sue you so fast. I mean, they beat Jose Cuervo in a massive lawsuit. So if they can put Cuervo into submission, just imagine what they can do to the old Charchian enterprises. So I think Maker's Mark is the absolute best when it comes to marketing bourbon. Another one that I feel like has done more of a cultural connection with people who are actively looking for super premium is a smaller brand called Michter's. Michter's is on a show called Billions. They've been in all kinds of TV shows. It just seems like wherever there's some kind of wealthy conversation or a couple of stockbrokers getting together, they're pouring something like Michter's. Buffalo Trace has done a great job as well. But they've been kind of vilified a little bit in the community because everybody wants their products and they can't get it. And so they're go on the message boards and everything and hate them. But Buffalo Trace wins a lot.
Michter's is so good. I've got the rye in my house right now. You gave me, when I visited you about 5 years ago in your office in Louisville, Fred, you gave me a bottle of their 10-year-old bourbon, and it was one of the best bottles I've ever had. Michter's, for my money, can basically do no wrong. I feel like their product is just outstanding.
And it's a beautiful story because this guy that came, basically resurrected the Michter's brand. That was a historic Pennsylvania brand. And when he acquired the trademarks for it in the late 1980s and started putting Kentucky whiskey in it. And when he did that, all the Pennsylvania whiskey people were very upset because there was a huge rivalry between Pennsylvania and Kentucky for a long time. And so for this to happen is the equivalent of the Colts moving to Indianapolis, right? It was a big deal. And so Michter's drew a lot of hate and criticism in the early to mid 2000s because they were gaining notoriety with Kentucky whiskey versus Pennsylvania stuff. But they've since built their own distillery. They pay a lot of homage to their Pennsylvania roots. And I think most of that stuff has been forgiven, except for those who just still hold grudges. But I'll tell you what, they make great whiskey. Their Baumburgers PFG finished third in my top 100. So,
wow,
they're doing good stuff. Yeah.
Michter's is fantastic. Now, speaking of allocations of Buffalo Trace, the Utah booze scene is it's terrible. Fortunately, Fred, I live about 60 minutes away from the Nevada border. So I can get to Lee's Discount Liquors, and I've got a lot of options. And it just amazes me that how this is so state by state. Nevada has everything, and it's affordable.
And prostitution. You need,
and also legalized prostitution. I don't know if you can do that in Mesquite. Maybe, I don't know. And then if I'm 15 more minutes towards Utah, I can walk into the one government liquor store in town, and my selection is terrible. The prices are not good. There's, you will never, I can't get Michter's there. I can get, if I want a bottle of Jim Beam, I can get Jim Beam. If I want Jack Daniels, I can do that. It's absurd. Oh, and get this. Utah starting January 1, every single person must show ID when buying alcohol. I've been legally drinking since 1986, and I'm getting carded because every single person has to get carded, no judgment, based on your appearance and how old you obviously are. Ugh, Fred.
Well, I tell you what, Utah, you move there for the mountains and the scenery, right? Not for their allocations. But they're kind of, in the liquor business, Utah is one of those states where everyone kind of knows, it's difficult there. But the thing is that there is demand, and High West has done a really good job opening up a lot of the laws there. I mean, I think up until a couple years ago, there was a law where a bartender had to be behind a curtain in order to make a drink, so you couldn't see them. So like that's one of the laws that I believe has changed in Utah. But it has
changed. I can confirm.
Yeah. So there is, when you're in a really religious state, that these laws are often on the books from the 30s through the 60s. And Alabama has a law where you can't buy donuts in a liquor store. And South Carolina has a law where you can't sell magazines within like 100 feet of whiskey. So you can't have drunks having too many carbs, and you can't have them too literate. So there's just all these laws that are on the books, and it just takes time to peel them away. And people get more focused on more important zoning issues and things like that in municipalities and counties and states. So people who want to sell liquor often just they don't know the avenues to change them. And here in the last 20 years, that there's been a big change in that. And Utah is one of the ground levels. Without High West, I mean, who knows how things would be there.
Yeah, and High West is everywhere here. It's it's ubiquitous, which is great. It's a good product, and I'm glad it is here. Fred Minnick, America's premier whiskey expert. Really encourage you to check out the two podcasts, the Fred Minnick Show. You have astounding guests on the Fred Minnick Show. I know you've had the Mannings on, and it's staggering to me, the level of superstars that you have on the Fred Minnick Show, because people love to talk about whiskey. Then there's Fourth and Neat, your other podcast with Jared Allen. We encourage people to check that out as well. And your forthcoming book is called Bottom Shelf. You get to learn a lot more about the story of Old Crow, along with Fred's personal story, military service. You alluded to your battle with PTSD, and a lot of great stuff in Bottom Shelf as well. Fred, thank you for joining. It's been a ton of fun catching up.
Always a pleasure, my friend. And be on the lookout for who I should be picking next year for fantasy. I got the number one pick. I won the toilet bowl in my league, so I got the number one pick for next year.
All right, so you're the second worst team.
Actually, no, I was one spot from the playoffs. And I started Purdy over. I started Jordan Love over Purdy one week, and it killed me. And I got bounced in the playoffs. But I would have won the playoffs because my scores were so high. It's a sore spot in my life right now. But
it was the Jordan Love game. Yeah, the Jordan Love game, I think week 16 that he got knocked out of, that ended one of my playoff runs as well. So I feel your pain on that. That was a tough one, Fred.
Tough, but I'll be back next year. I want to get him.
There's always next year. That's what we say in Minnesota with our sports teams. Fred, thanks so much for joining us. Great to catch up, and we'll do it again.
All right, my friend. Cheers.
Cheers. Fred Minnick. Great dude, and really, really fun podcast. We encourage you to check that out for sure. Coming up at the top of the hour, I will be joined by Sigmund Bloom. We're going to talk about a variety of things around the NFL, including the coaching carousel. When we return immediately, I want to get into some J.J. McCarthy stuff. We did the big Sam Darnold diatribe. I did encourage people to use the text line. Let me get that back. I used to have the text line all memorized. It was a piece of cake. It is the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. 64686 is the number, of course. You can talk back, iHeartRadio app, microphone for 30 seconds. And you can let us know what you think about the Sam Darnold situation. The Vikings made a mistake. Unequivocal. It's not deniable now. I don't think there's anywhere for anybody to hide if they want to try to suggest the Vikings did not make a mistake. But if you heard that segment, you are welcome to respond to that as well. We'll return. More Paul Charchian coming up after this break.
The Fan.
Welcome back. Paul Charchian in today. Brett Blakemore with me as well. Brett, I've barely even given you a chance to crack a mic. It has been all diatribe all morning. The Darnold diatribe was a long one. If you want to get in any cheap shots, you are a known admitted Packer fan.
Yeah.
You were outed years ago. If you want to get any cheap shots on the Vikings fumbling the Sam Darnold situation, this is your chance.
I'll just say, I'm not in the business of kicking people while they're down. Despite the smugness and Packer preview, I just never have been. It is just not laughable, not ironic, for lack of a better word, ironic, but it's just so Vikings-like that this offseason it's like you're on a game show and you have 4 doors in front of you. And the host says, 3 of these doors are going to be a solid quarterback. And the other one, you're going to be eliminated by Christmas. Pick which one you want. And the Vikings happen to stuff. You have the Rodgers door. Which would have been fine.
Yep.
I don't know how good.
He played shockingly well, brought his team to a division championship.
I still don't know if he comes back even with McCarthy, but that's neither here nor there. You have the Danny Dimes door, which turned out to be pretty okay. It would have been probably fine. You have the Sam Darnold door, which we've talked about exclusively now that he's a Super Bowl appearing quarterback. And then you have the J.J. McCarthy door. And the Vikings went, let's go with door number 4. Door number 9, please, is what they went with. And I don't think J.J. is doomed forever. Like, I get 100% they made a mistake. They should have went with Darnold. Everything you've said so far, I agree with. But I don't think he's doomed to be a terrible quarterback forever. If we get into like halfway through next season and we're still talking about fundamentals and pure progressions, then my antenna goes up. We might have trouble here. But I'm still riding it out personally because you have seen some flashes, but the flashes have been few and far between.
I think that's probably pretty accurate. Flashes were not enough. I'm going to talk about McCarthy in detail here in just a minute. Your team, the Packers, there's a scenario, a non-zero chance. It's not likely, non-zero chance. Your team has the wrong quarterback. That you're going to go through your version of what we just went through. Malik Willis looked really good. Small sample size. What, 2 games? Malik Willis looked really good. And Jordan Love, I thought Jordan Love was going to take a big step forward this year. To me, he looked just like the same guy he did last year. And last year we used the groin injury as an excuse for a lot of mediocre play. That was not part of what held back Jordan Love this year. I don't think anybody can say Jordan Love is with certainty the solution for the Packers at quarterback. He's paid like it.
He is. I'm trying to quickly, I didn't know I was going to have to defend Jordan Love again today, which is fine. If you look at any advanced analytic, he is in the top, like QBR, EPA. He's consistently in the top, as well as Green Bay just in general. The composite rankings for all of these, he's like a top 5 quarterback. And of course, I'm not going to be able to find it as soon as I need it. It's him, Purdy, Stafford are all in that upper echelon of QB composite rankings. the guy is so good. And I think it's more of a LaFleur and play calling thing that they got to be a little bit better and put the ball in his hands more often, especially when Josh Jacobs isn't going. And I'll retweet it whenever I find it. But all the stats and all the advanced analytics tell me that Jordan Love is an elite quarterback and will be. And Malik Willis, he's got his fun. Malik Willis is like the fling you met in college, at the bar, where you're going to have a great time and it's going to be fun, but you're not going to marry this gal. She's okay. She's a fun time. She'll get you hammered, but you're not marrying her. And that's how I feel about Malik. I think he's going to be good. I think he'll have flashes. I think it'll be similar. He's got the kind of Kyler Murray-esque, but he's probably a better passer than he is. I'm assuming maybe Miami could be a destination for him, but I will not even entertain. I'm a huge Love defender, obviously, but I'm not even going to entertain that Willis is better than Love.
If Jordan Love is who you said he is, how about scoring more than once in the second half of the Bears game? How about defending your 21-3 lead? How about defending your 27-16 lead? Now, I understand your team put up 27 points. That maybe should have been enough to win. You just feel like great quarterbacks find a way to win even when your defense is crumbling. And that's a lot of what happened, of course, in the second half as the Bears scored all those points in the fourth quarter. 22 points in the fourth quarter, something like that. Just feel like Jordan Love should be, if you are that good. And he threw 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. I mean, I'm not saying he played badly. I am saying great quarterbacks find a way to win that game.
So, first of all, the defense gave up 25 points in the fourth quarter. So I think it's hard to, and they said 4 touchdowns. He came like the third quarterback to throw 4 touchdowns, no picks, and lose a playoff game. It's incredibly rare. I found the composite QB rankings. Total QBR in the entire NFL, the 2025 season, Jordan Love, second. EPA per play, second. Completion percentage above expected, 5th. Bad throw percentage, 11th. Pressure to sack percentage, 7th. Air yards per reception, 13th. His overall score, 2nd in the NFL. In your advanced, you've got Brock Purdy 1, Love 2, May 3, Stafford 4, Prescott 5. That is your top analytical metric. So, but I will say this, in your avenue for fantasy owners, I don't think Jordan Love's a good, reliable fantasy quarterback right now. And I think a lot of that So
I might be tainting my viewpoint with a fantasy angle, which I'm known to do. I mean, and I'm so immersed in fantasy that sometimes that does happen. And Malik Willis's rushing makes him a uniquely good fantasy player.
Yeah.
And Love is more just your steady fantasy player. And maybe that's good enough to win games.
High floor, low ceiling type quarterback. Yeah. I would be looking for the more explosive, your Josh Allen's, obviously. But someone that's going to throw and run for a lot and put up a lot of points. And Love's just not going to be that fantasy guy, especially when they don't even know who their wide receiver room's going to be. And if the guy they drafted first overall is good enough, that knows the playbook well enough and can block well enough, they'll throw to him. So they've got a lot to figure out, but the talent's certainly there.
My good friend Dan reminding me that Garrett Bradbury headed to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That was a player, the Vikings, we were talking about Sam Darnold, the decision to let Sam Darnold go. Also, Garrett Bradbury. And, the Vikings, in fairness, Bradbury hadn't played very well here. But we also just fired our offensive line coach. So, I don't know where the blame may lie and may not, but that looks like another dubious decision, and you're not going to get them all right. And I totally understand that no general manager is ever perfect. That no front office as a group is ever perfect. But knowing that Garrett Bradbury played so much better, and Ryan Kelly, so we moved over to Ryan Kelly, and just knowing that we invested into a guy who had 4 known concussions. And then obviously was unavailable for huge chunks of this year because of concussions. Yeah, also a frustrating decision. When we come back, let's talk through JJ McCarthy. I haven't had a chance to really talk on these airwaves about his season, just get in my 2 cents. And I think it all, the whole view of JJ McCarthy does change at least a bit, knowing what Sam Darnold has done and what he did with this team. Let's talk through where we are with JJ McCarthy when we come back. This is the kind of jazz I don't like. Give me some Cannonball Adderley. Give me some John Coltrane. Give me some Miles Davis, especially the 50s and 60s era. Miles Davis, not as interested in the 70s and 80s era. Miles Davis. I want some dimly lit, smoke-filled bar kind of jazz. I don't know. This fusion stuff, it was not great in the 80s, and it's not great now.
You're hard to please.
I am hard to please about that, Brett. Very, very touchy on my jazz. Mm-hmm. This is, I don't know. I mean, there's nobody who listens to that and goes, I gotta Shazam that. I need more of that band. It's never going to happen. I asked people to pass along their thoughts on Sam Darnold and my Darnold diatribe from earlier today. And for those that missed it, we can say, in the form of a declarative statement, the Vikings made a mistake by not signing Sam Darnold. I don't think there is any room for equivocation on that, but I'm willing to listen. I asked people to respond via the text and talk lines. And Brett, tell me what we've got.
Yeah, I have been looking at the text line. There's a couple thoughts on Darnold. Here's one angle that a couple people have said. This is Jacob in Virginia. I agree that they should have signed him, Darnold, but they did extend an offer, which he declined. That was missing in the context of your Darnold diatribe. Here's another one. I would have wanted him to say a Viking. Well, it's the same idea. I would have wanted him to say a Viking, but to say the Vikings messed up is not completely true. They made an offer. Darnold had an equal share in deciding he wanted to leave. Teams can't just keep whoever they want because they want to.
Okay, that's fair, but Darnold wanted to be the starter. That's all. I mean, he said he wanted to stay here to be the starter, and he would have stayed here if we had just told him he could be the starter. He didn't want to be looking over his shoulder, much like Kirk Cousins. He didn't want to be looking over his shoulder waiting for JJ McCarthy to start. And I think that would have been fair. So all you had to do was say, Sam, you played great in 2024. We're going to take this opportunity to even further mentor JJ McCarthy for some future date. Remember, JJ McCarthy was the youngest starting quarterback in the NFL this last year, let alone the year before that he lost due to injury. You could have just told Sam, yeah, you're the starter. And you might have even meant it. And the probability is that Sam would have played like he did with Seattle, maybe even better. He threw for more yards and more touchdowns with Minnesota than he did with Seattle. That Sam would have played well, would have stayed your starter all year, and the Vikings would be in the playoffs. Maybe the Super Bowl, given how well the defense was playing. And so yes, that it's a fair point. The Vikings did extend an offer, but if you extend an offer without offering that guy to be the starting quarterback, it's not going to work. It's also why they didn't get Daniel Jones. Same thing. So I rebuff that rebuttal.
Well, here's another one. So this is 701 guy. I believe that's Nodak off the top of my head. I'd have to double check. You seem to have a blind spot when it comes to protecting the quarterback. If our O-line wouldn't have gotten any better, it could have been more games like the last two we played for the Vikings. The dollars saved were used to bolster other lines. Let's see. Here's another one. Charge.
Okay.
Yes, in hindsight, it would have been great to have Sam. I think the Vikes offered him a contract. You talked about that. And if we did keep him, we don't have as much cash to spend on the O-line and the D-line. And in hindsight, if we didn't get the best options there either, the GM not on a good run, says 952 guy.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Okay, sure. You saved yourself quarterbacking money so that you could put it into Ryan Kelly and his missed games. So you could put it into Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen. I mean, those are replacement level players. Those guys, that was money, when in doubt, put your money towards your quarterback, your proven good quarterback. I know that there are many Brzezinskis out there who love to tweak the cap around and really do firmly believe you can't get to a Super Bowl paying Sam Darnold what Sam Darnold got paid, despite the fact Sam Darnold's in the Super Bowl. I know that because that's all I heard for 6 years with Kirk Cousins is we're never going to win with Kirk Cousins because he's got 14% of the salary cap tied up in one guy. Oh, can't win like that. Not with 14%. No quarterback has ever won the Super Bowl who had higher than a 13.5% salary cap hit. I don't know what to do with those people. I really hope my favorite team isn't entering another of the Keenum, Bradford, Bridgewater, Castle, Ponder, Farrat, Tavares, Jackson runs. Too old for that. Brett, you've got it in you. You're a Packer fan. You would love to see another run like that for 20 years. I can't be a part of that again. We just have to get this figured out. Let's take a break, Brett.
Yep.
When we come back, Sigmund Bloom's one of my longtime favorite people to talk to in the fantasy industry, all around football. Great football mind. I want to talk to him about. He's also a huge Steelers fan. I want to talk to him a little bit about Aaron Rodgers. The decision with Mike McCarthy is really weird. Some of the coaching stuff that's gone around here. I'll get his first blush thoughts on the Super Bowl. We haven't even talked about the looming Super Bowl, Brett. We'll do that a little bit as well and get an outsider's viewpoint on J.J. McCarthy as well. Sigmund Bloom joins us when we come back to the Fan.